Welcome back. Now, King Charles III and Queen Camilla have been crowned in Westminster Abbey. Police have arrested 52 people, including the leader of the anti-Monarchy group of Republicans at the coronation ceremony. Now, for more on this, we are joined by Musa, Mdunge, political analyst from the University of Dundee. Musa, thank you so much for joining us once again this evening. Now, today was a spectacle that echoed medieval times, but featured a lot of modern flourishes. I mean, the pageantry and symbolism dates back more than 1,000 years, but the crowning of this king featured a lot of new twists. What was your take on today's coronation?
Thank you, Kasia, for having me, and thank you to your viewers. Yes, look, today was a very consequential moment in the life of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And, you know, King Charles III's coronation, of course, featured certain new twists into it. In line and in reflection, I believe, with where the United Kingdom finds itself in 2023. You know, the last time we saw such an event was in 1953 with the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II. You know, the United Kingdom at the time was still somewhat of an empire, though it was dwindling at the time. And currently, you know, it is a country where, you know, for the first time, the majority of the country are not white people, you know, so that is a huge, huge change in the demographics of the United Kingdom as a start. And then secondly, think of the very fact that, you know, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom currently, Rishi Sunak, is of Asian descent. The First Minister of Scotland is as well Asian descent. And all of this speaks to where the United Kingdom finds itself today as a very cosmopolitan country. And that reflects, you know, certain values or changes in certain values. And this was very much in reflection with today's coronation.
I mean, speaking of that diversity, Musa, the ceremony emphasized diversity and inclusion with multi-faith elements than any other previous coronation, with contributions from the Jewish, Muslim and Buddhist representatives. That reflects Charles's vow to be the defender of faith as opposed to be the defender of the faith?
Well, look, in terms of his own allegiance to the United Kingdom, he maintains the position of defender of the faith. But certainly the compromise was that as much as that would be the case, what would be critical is to reflect the fact that the United Kingdom is not just a Christian country or Protestant country, as it were, but rather that it also has other faiths, such as the Judaism religion, such as the Islamic religion, such as a huge Hindu population. Remember that the Prime Minister himself is a practicing Hindi, and it was quite consequential to see him in his role as Prime Minister giving the first scripture of the ceremony of coronation. So, you know, this is just but the reflection of the United Kingdom as it stands currently and where it envisions itself to be. Remember, it is under the Conservative Party that this idea of a global Britain has been born. And what does that global Britain look like? And how will the United Kingdom seek to realign, reconfigure their relationships with the Commonwealth, particularly those of the global South, such as South Africa, Nigeria, and India, who remain critical players in the global economy and whose voices loom larger with each year as they see growing economies and growing clout. And so the United Kingdom really stands a chance to play a critical position in really being the buffer state, the connecting state between the developing South as well as the developed North, if it should so see so as its role and its identity as it seeks to become what it called the global Britain.
And this global Britain had women bishops taking part in the service. I mean, for the very first time in a coronation service that goes back 1,000 years, like we've already mentioned. Is this another reflection of the monarchy gradually letting go of its old stringent ways?
It's not just about the monarchy, but the whole establishment, as it were, you know. So the church is quite involved, as you would know, that the coronation is both a political event, meaning that highly influenced by what the Prime Minister and his government of the day envision, but it is a spiritual event as well and a religious event. And so the Church of England looms large, and so you see the rise in the role of women in the church and in such ceremonies as in line with the modernization of the church and the letting go of certain belief systems that are out of step with where British society is. And so, the monarchy represents both a symbol of the past ways, the past traditions, but as well as a step into the future. And given the type of man that King Charles III is and has been, even in his time as the Prince of Wales, he sought to dance a balanced dance when it comes between the modernization issue as well as ensuring that the monarchy keeps in step with old held traditions that ensure that the king and the monarchy as a whole is above the political fray. That is the key thing about this coronation. It must be seen as it gives homage to the fact that the monarchy is still seen as above the fray, though we no longer speak of the divine rights of kings, but certainly he is above the political fray as the head of state. In fact, he is the state embodied.
Speaking of that and also speaking of the role that women play, we know that Camilla was crowned alongside Charles, and after the couple's long and often complicated relationship, she will now be officially described as Queen Camilla. What is her role now as Queen Consort going forward?
Well, Queen Camilla's role will be very, very important. As the Queen Consort, though, yes, certainly today we found out that she would be known simply as Queen Camilla, it is clear that she will play a very critical and supportive role for King Charles. You would know that part of the reason why Queen Camilla looms so large in, British history, is the mere fact that, King Charles is very adamant while Prince of Wales that he did not envision himself taking over the seat of power of state unless Queen Camilla was on his side. And so she really looms large, and she will play a critical role in bringing to attention key issues such around drugs, issues around education, issues around crime, issues around gender-based violence that have been very close to her heart. These matters will loom large and will help form and shape, King Charles III's monarchy and the kind of monarchy that he wants to have and the kind of monarchy he seeks to pass over to Prince William when it is his turn to take up the throne.
Speaking of Prince William and now mentioning the King's sons, we know that the Duke of Sussex did not appear on the balcony this afternoon. Will we ever see any unity amongst the King and his sons?
Look, that relationship will take quite a long time to really mend, especially when there continues, especially from the side of Prince Harry and, the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle. There continues to be, communication through media. There continues to be talk of documentaries and further books that would expose the lives of the royals. That then leaves it open for anybody's guess as to when that relationship will be reconciled, particularly as we know that the relationship, remains quite bad when one looks at the relationship between Prince William as well as Prince Harry. So for the time being, one does not see that relationship changing. But we know that on both sides, and particularly from Prince Charles's side, they were quite happy when Prince Harry decided to take up the invitation and to come back to the United Kingdom for the coronation, albeit without the Duchess of Sussex by his side.
And how did that sit with the Brits, him being there without the Duchess by his side?
I think for the British people, they long for what they call the Fab Four to return again, which is, King Charles III, Queen Camilla, Prince William, and as well as the Duchess of Cambridge, the Princess of Wales. And what's interesting is the British people seem to have, a close nostalgia when it comes to the idea of these four playing a role in modernizing the British royal family, in serving as a soft power for the United Kingdom on the global stage. And so he was indeed welcome, but certainly you could see that the prince was out of step. He felt very nervous. He felt out of place. But, it was good to see other royals step up as well to try as best to accommodate the prodigal son.
Now, Musa, we know that the leader of the anti-monarchist group, Republic, said earlier in the week that they'd planned to protest, and of course we saw them clad in yellow, chanting "Not My King" as the royal procession passes by. Talk to us about the 52 arrests that happened today.
Look, I mean, these are the times that we are living in, so in a country that protests that it believes in liberal democracy, in human rights, in the rights of expression, the right to protest, what would be the greatest day and symbol of what the United Kingdom represents if we didn't see dissenters, those who believe in a republican cause for the United Kingdom, also step up and declare that this particular monarch is not theirs, and it is in line with the kind of modern Britain that we see. Now, questions do arise whether it was okay for the security forces and agencies to take such measures, as it would then reflect that in actual fact that the United Kingdom is not so different than any other country where the people rise up and protest against the political elite. Now, of course, security concerns may have been raised in terms of this matter, but it did not seem that they posed so huge a threat as what was being displayed in terms of mitigating the risk by the security forces. And it will be interesting to see what, if at all, are any of the follow-ups done particularly by Parliament that has a role to play in keeping the executive accountable for how security agencies, exercise their power and their duties as they see fit.
And what was the sentiment amongst the Brits, especially with regards to this 52 being arrested?
Well, look, for the majority, really, it was neither here nor there. I think this day was there to represent a new day for the United Kingdom. It symbolized the ending, if you think about it, of the mourning over the late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, who ruled and reigned for 70 years. And so Britons were mostly focused on that. But certainly, I would expect that there would be some concern at what would be perceived as a heavy-handedness by the security agencies. But whether there will be a follow-through or an investigation or inquiry of some sort, is unlikely at this stage.
Now, Musa, we know that the public is footing the bill for this coronation. Do we know what the cost was?
Well, look, I mean, we know that with such events, it can cost upwards to more than £30 million in terms of cost. You must consider the security costs that are involved, not only for the royal family, but for the government. Members of Parliament are also invited, as well as members of the House of Lords. Then you have to include on that the heads of states and governments who are invited to these ceremonies, ambassadors, heads of diplomatic missions, celebrities, and the people in general who all line up the streets. And so there's a huge security cost on these coronation events. And, what is very interesting is that the king has been, quite public in saying that he would like a reduction as much as possible in the costs for this particular coronation, in keeping in step with the fact that the United Kingdom, like many other countries in the world, is facing a huge cost of living crisis. It's facing an existential moment right now, now, where it is facing higher levels of inflation, but is existing in a low economic growth level currently. And, such conditions means that the measures that you have, both from a monetary policy perspective and a fiscal policy perspective, are very limited. And it is made worse by the external factors, such as the Russian invasion in Ukraine, that is hindering the flow of agricultural products, but as well as, the exportation of gas and other energy products. And so this is where the United Kingdom finds itself, and certainly there will be questions raised about the costs and whether the government did as best as they could to be economically prudent.
Speaking of being economically prudent, officials are expecting to see at least a tourism boost. And, of course, there was no shortage of coronation-themed events, memorabilia, commemorative products that could ring up additional sales taxes. Do you think that could contribute somewhat in boosting that aspect of the economy?
Well, it's a momentary thing, Katleho, indeed, because when you think about it, yes, it's the fanfare for now, but things then return back to reality after that. I would remind you of the fact in our own context in South Africa, when we hosted the World Cup, there was great fanfare, and there was a boost in terms of infrastructure development and investment, and certainly in terms of household expenditure and the flooding of exported dollars and other currencies through tourism. There was an improvement in economic growth. But the structural impediments of the South African economy showed themselves again, as we see today, that we've existed for the past 15 years in low growth and a high level of unemployment. And so Great Britain is no different, especially since the end or the exit of the United Kingdom from the EU through Brexit in 2016. The economy has just not been able to reboot, and issues such as COVID-19 made matters worse, and again, a fumbling of economic policy by the Conservative Party last year also shook the markets, and where the markets go, the real economy tends to follow. And so that's the challenge the United Kingdom faces right now, and if the Conservative Party, being very weak following the local government elections, we cannot foresee in the future any political stability that convinces one that the government has a plan for the economy and is able to see it through.
Speaking of plans, now that the pageantry is over, the coronation, the glitz and the glamour has settled down, what's the first most important step that the king now needs to take in moving the UK forward?
Well, I think the first thing that he will have to do is, of course, face up to the challenges that the country is facing. Chief among them, I would believe, is the integrity of the United Kingdom itself. And what he will need to do is ensure that in Scotland, that he continues to act as a bridge between both the Conservative Party and the Scottish National Party that governs Scotland and is seeking for Scotland to become an independent state. And then secondly, he must turn his gaze to Northern Ireland, where we know that there are challenges in ensuring that a stable government is in place in order to ensure that service delivery takes up again. And so as well the integrity of the Good Friday Agreement, which we know celebrated its 25th anniversary since it was signed between the Republic of Ireland and the United Kingdom and Northern Ireland itself. And then thirdly, Katleho, he needs to turn his attention to the Commonwealth, especially as the United Kingdom seeks to assert itself as global Britain. And so his leadership is going to be very critical, especially when we see the wave of independence movement in the Commonwealth, as was the case in Barbados last year in 2022. It is likely that we will see a growing agitation for independence in countries such as Canada, Australia, as well as New Zealand. So it will be very key. How does he handle those relationships? And fourth and lastly, Katlego, he has to look at the Commonwealth from the developing South perspective, ensuring that he creates stronger financial and economic links between the United Kingdom as well as South Africa, Zimbabwe, Pakistan and India. Speaking of Zimbabwe, by the way, the issue of sanctions looms large, and we know South Africa's own agitations with the United Kingdom in saying that as long as sanctions prevail in Zimbabwe, it is difficult to fathom political stability in that country. So a lot needs to be done, but time will tell whether this king has the will to see it through.
Musa, before I let you go, the EFF issued out a statement earlier today saying that the great star of Africa should be returned to South Africa, and that it was truly had no dignified grounds for the British to accept this gem. Will this ever happen in our lifetime?
Look, one doesn't really know. One doesn't really know. And I say this because as much as the king has been very steadfast, especially when one listens to the address he made while as Prince of Wales last year during the independence ceremony of Barbados, he spoke plainly about the fact that the United Kingdom must reflect on its role in terms of the slave trade, colonization, and the dark history of the United Kingdom and other Commonwealth states. And so certainly from that angle, one is hopeful that an apology is at hand, and at best, at a more optimistic level, that indeed we see the return of these crown jewels to Africa as a symbol of a reflection of a time and a period gone by, but secondly, as a symbol of the role that Africa and other Commonwealth countries played in establishing the United Kingdom as the great power that it is, and the status that it continues to enjoy, but also as a reflection of a new commitment to build a new relationship of partners, not as one between a master and a slave.
Well, always a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for your time this evening. That was Musa Mdunge, a political analyst from the University of Dundee in Scotland, speaking to us there, wrapping up the King's coronation.